Are you considering divorce? Are you dealing with it now? Are you on the other side and not sure what comes next? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show with your host, Lisa C. Decker.
Welcome to the Divorce Do's and Don'ts Show. I am your temporary host today, Marcella Kripe. I am assistant to Lisa Decker, who is your normal host, as you probably know. Lisa is the CEO and founder of DivorceTown USA, the organization which brings you this show. And she and I have been working together since 2015. So it's my honor and privilege to be with you today. If you've been watching us live so far in 2023, then you know that January is International Child-Centered Divorce Month, and that each week we've been bringing you another important episode related to children of divorce. Today, we are honored to have with us Bruce Fredenburg and Carol Hughes, co-authors of the book, Home Will Never Be the Same Again, a guide for adult children of gray divorce. Bruce is a Master of Science and is a licensed marriage and family therapist with board certification in clinical hypnosis. He is also an EMDR therapist, psychotherapist, collaborative divorce coach, neutral child specialist, mediator, co-parenting divorce coach, reunification therapist, and trainer. For more than 25 years, Bruce has studied and taken specialized training in the intersection of psychology, spirituality, and holistic approaches to mental health. Dr. Carol, Ph.D., is a board-certified hypnotherapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist, an EMDR therapist, author, and trainer. As a psychotherapist, co-parenting and child specialist, family specialist, divorce coach, and mediator for more than 25 years, she has assisted hundreds of families experiencing separation and divorce. Well, with those credentials, there are few people better qualified to speak to us on today's topic. Welcome to the show today, both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Marcella.
Yeah, we're very happy to be here.
So just to get us started, tell us a little bit what inspired you to write the book, Home Will Never Be the Same Again.
You know, that's a great question, and it has more than one answer because it's complicated, but part of it is that during our more than 30 years in practice, Carol and I have known each other for decades, and over time, we've noticed that a lot of people coming through our practice are there because of the pain that was caused either in a divorce that they themselves did that went badly, or their parents' divorce that went badly. And we also started to notice there's this group of people that generally are dismissed, and those are adult children, people who are already adults when their parents divorce. And so this disruption that happens in their lives is totally ignored. And so Carol wrote a blog article about this for our practice group. And about, half a year, almost a year later, a writer for the New York Times was researching the topic of gray divorce and called Carol up and asked her if she would be interviewed for the New York Times. And Carol's a very bright person. She said, sure, I'll do that. And then it got published. And then some months later, almost a year maybe, a literary agent for one of the big literary houses in New York was researching the topic because of her own life. And she came across that article because it's the New York Times and things stay on the internet forever. So she called Carol up and asked if she'd be willing to write a book on this topic, because it's really not just an underserved population, but a totally unserved population. And so Carol recognized the opportunity. And so she said yes. And then she called me up because we have multiple unfinished books in our computers. And we always keep saying, well, which one are we going to finish? Which one's going to be it? And she said, I've got our book. Do you want to write it with me? And I said, sure, because I recognized the opportunity. But it's also a cautionary tale, boys and girls, because I didn't realize I was signing on to a 4-year journey of writing and researching and rewriting and rechecking. And so 4 years later, the book came out, and it's been really well received. And we're really happy that we had an opportunity to do it.
Well, we're certainly grateful that you took the time to write this book and to share it with us and to talk a little bit more about it today. Just for those of our audience who aren't aware, we want to define gray divorce. So gray divorce is a specific divorce for those who are over the age of 50. And so many of their children now are going to be adults. Maybe they're single or married or have kids of their own, but this is a special age group for the divorcing population. And so since we're talking about gray divorce and adult children, tell us a little bit about the prevalency of it. Is this a growing trend? How prevalent is gray divorce now?
Yes, Marcella, it's very prevalent. In fact, the original researchers were sociologists at the Bowling Green State University, and they were researching the U.S. Census from 1990 forward. And what they discovered is that for the people in the what's now called the gray divorce population, their divorce rate was growing at double the rate. From 1990 forward, their divorce rate had doubled, while the divorce rate in the other age groups had been declining. And listen to this, the divorce rate for those 65 and older had tripled. And these researchers using their analytics are predicting that by the year 2030, this whole divorce age group of 50 and older, the gray divorce group, will triple again. That's their prediction. So it's the largest population in the U.S. and in the developed countries of divorce worldwide.
That's incredible. I know in our practice, we are seeing more and more gray divorces. So we have noticed that trend, but did not realize those statistics were that widespread. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Right. I'm sorry, Marcella, to interrupt you. The Bowling Green State University researchers coined the term gray divorce revolution. It was that profound, and they think that way because they're sociologists. It's kind of a negative word, really, but that's what they coined it, and it's stuck. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to share.
No, that's okay. It's good to have this information. It helps us to understand what people might be going through. That's the whole purpose of our show today. So why is that? Why is this particular demographic growing so rapidly? Why are people divorcing later in life?
There's a variety of reasons. One is that people are living longer, healthy lives. Maybe not absolute numbers of living longer, but healthy. So people they've been spending their life, maybe they got married in their early 20s, mid 20s, and then they set about building their careers, raising kids, and over time may have drifted apart, living parallel life. And maybe they would have chosen somebody different. When we're younger, we have a different set of criteria than when we're older. So if they haven't been really nurturing their relationship on a regular basis, or maybe they were never really well suited in the first place. And so now the children are gone, and they're looking at maybe 2 or 3 or more decades of life ahead of them, and looking around at their spouse that they maybe don't have anything in common with, or maybe been angry with, or haven't been paying attention to. And so adding to that is, since the 1970s, certainly, many American women and around the world have, after the second wave of feminism, women are in their own careers. And so they're not dependent on having to stay in a marriage in order to survive financially. And so also, cultural norms have changed so that there's less stigma attached to divorce. By the way, the numbers on this are quite staggering. In the United States alone, it's actually rising, but the last statistics we figured out from the census data is that 300,000 couples 50 and older go through divorce in the United States every year. So that's 600,000 individuals. And if you add in their 1 to 2 children, it's 900,000 to 1.2 million people enter this demographic every year. And so the problem that we noticed is that the people are just dismissing them. So the people who didn't have any help last year have a new group of people who aren't getting any help this year, but the other group didn't go away. So it's really rising and impacting up to 3 generations of families at the same time.
Wow, that is a very sobering statistic. So if this is such a huge population, adult children of divorce, I mean, 1.2 million people going through this trauma, at the same time, you could say, why is it that they're dismissed or overlooked, the effect of gray divorce on this group, on these adult children?
It's a good question. Number one is, and this is not to blame our current legal system, and it's similar around the world, only has jurisdiction over minor children. And so for decades, family lawyers, to no fault of their own, have been telling their clients, don't worry about your adult children, they don't matter. We've had, and we're quoting what many family lawyers have told us, that that's what they were saying for decades. And they're shocked when they learned, we've been speaking to a lot of people the last few years, training divorce professionals, and these family lawyers say, gosh, I feel so bad because I was one of those lawyers telling parents that their adult children don't matter because they don't legally in the legal system. So since divorce is a legal process, the legal system has had a big influence. Secondly, is the myth in our culture, just in general, is that when children become adults magically at whatever age it is in their jurisdiction, they're adults. Well, we know that emotionally, we've all gone through it. We weren't very mature at 18 or 20 or 22, but that's the mythology in our culture and around the world in industrialized countries. So because of this myth, it's very easy for us to just say, well, just be glad that you weren't 6 when your parents divorced, or for the adult children to tell themselves, what's wrong with me? Why am I so depressed? Why am I anxious? Why am I crying? Well, it feels like my whole life has just turned upside down. That's one reason. And when the family lawyers tell the parents that, your adult children well, they'll be okay. They're adults. What parent doesn't want to believe that their parents are going to be okay or are okay?
Agreed. And just because you didn't have to create a parenting plan to share custody of a child doesn't mean the child isn't affected. But I guess it's that out of sight, out of mind mentality, it seems like, as far as maybe the legal approach to it. But certainly the psychological effects, it appears, are very similar. We've talked a lot about some crossover, and we're going to do that now. We're going to talk a little bit about what parents can do. So they're going through divorce, they've got a lot on their plate, but what can older parents who are divorcing do to help the adult children cope so that they don't get overlooked and so that their feelings aren't dismissed?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because when we were structuring the book, we were aware that people don't even know that this problem exists. So we started off by identifying the problem and explaining how it got to be that way. But we didn't want it just to be a book about unsolvable problems. So we started adding, in every chapter, we put in tips and ideas and strategies people can use to help their family avoid the worst mistakes. And so we have a whole chapter also just on hope and healing. So I'd say the first thing would be to really for the parents to be aware. The parents themselves are adults, right? And they're having emotional pain while they're going through this. So Carol and I were talking about this when we were researching it. It's astounding. They already know that as adults, that doesn't protect them from pain, but then they act like their kids should just roll with it, So the first thing would be for the parents to understand that their divorce is affecting their adult children, and to just listen to them. Don't dismiss them. Don't try to make it better. Don't tell them, oh, just don't worry about it. It'll be fine, because it doesn't feel fine. It's their family's disintegrating. It's like the death of a family. Nobody would be surprised if they were upset if a parent died. Well, how about their whole family going away? And so the other thing is to understand that there's certain pressures that are going to be on the adult children because they're adults. Like Carol likes to describe the nevers, that they're into their adult life now, and now they're never going to see their parents in the same room again at a Thanksgiving or or Christmas or a 4th of July or the family trip to the mountains or something like that they do every year. And on top of that, just maybe going out to their own siblings, like the mother and the father go to their brothers and sisters and their own parents, and tell them explicitly that they don't want their children to be invited to bash the other parent conversations, and to don't encourage them to do that, and give them the freedom to not have to do that. Nobody has the right to tell somebody what relationship they can have with their own parent. And it's going to be different than the relationship that the parents have with each other, the parent-child relationship. So don't make your child your ally against the other parent. It's going to be offensive. It's going to hurt. It's going to cause trouble. It could cause split in the relationships. It could end up costing the divorcing parents access to their grandchildren if it causes disruption in the marriage of their adult children. So there's things that they can do to avoid the worst aspects of it. And so that would be the most important thing.
Could not agree with you more. And some of the things that you said there really struck with me, because some of them are similar to what happens to young children. You're trying not to pit, one parent against the other, because no matter how old you are, you can be 50 years old, you still love both your parents. Even if one of them was a jerk to the other one, they're still your parents.
Exactly.
And so I think that's a huge thing that parents need to realize is, please, your kids don't want to take sides. It doesn't matter how old they are. Adult kids may be a little bit more savvy. Maybe they can see or identify issues that maybe younger kids can't have, but that doesn't stop you from loving a parent. So let's talk a little bit about that. We did a little crossover between the two. Let's talk about some of the things that are unique to adult children of divorce, maybe challenges that they will have to face that little itty bitties don't necessarily have to deal with when their parents are going through this process.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that they all do have in common, Marcella, the minor children and the adult children, I tell parents this all the time, is they're all grieving. They're grieving the losses. As Bruce said, they don't see their parents at Thanksgiving together anymore, or other activities, which out of court divorce, which we think is preferable to litigation, does help parents say, let's be able to dance at our children's wedding. Let's go to the grandkids' performance at school, so that their adult children don't lose those relationships as much as they do in other divorce processes. So grieving, it's important to remember that all the children of all ages are grieving the losses of their intact family. But unique to the adult children are the different ages they're in can sometimes affect them. For example, the ages 18 to 25-ish, often they're in college, they're in trade school training, whatever they're doing after high school. And many of them are still dependent financially in some way on their parents helping them, because they're not established yet in their life. And when divorce comes, all of a sudden, sometimes that financial support disappears, or the adult children fear it will, and they're afraid to talk to their parents about it because that sounds selfish. So there's pressure on those younger adult children. They don't really know what to do. And especially when our culture says, yeah, you're an adult now, figure it out. That's tremendous stress on young people, that age, young adult children. And also, this is a common theme throughout the adult children at all ages, is if one or both parents relies too much on the adult children as a confidant, as their counselor, and they don't know how to say, I'm not a professional, I'm not equipped to help you here. May I help you find somebody to talk to, a therapist, a counselor, someone at church, a pastor or synagogue. And they really don't know, because there isn't support and validation for these adult children generally to know what to do, because they're supposed to know what to do, right? Because they're adults. So that's another stressor that they can feel at all different ages of adulthood. The middle-aged adult children often have their family already going. They have children maybe, which are grandchildren to the parents. They might be mid-career or even early career, which is a lot of stress trying to establish, oneself in their career or profession. But yet they're worrying about their parents, especially if one or both parents leans on them a lot, calls them at work. The research has lots of stories about these kind of situations, and so have we seen in our practice for decades. And again, they don't know how to deal with it. It can cause stress in their own marriages. They don't, if the adult, as you said earlier, Marcel, if one of the parents has been a jerk, then they don't, model the behavior that they don't want their own children to see. they won't let the grandchildren be with this parent anymore. That causes a lot of pain to the parent, but also to the grandchildren. And as Bruce mentioned earlier, the extended family, that can cause problems because people line up, you know, good parent, bad parent. And even the middle-aged children, sometimes one of the parents is truly depressed or anxious or can't work. And then that middle-aged child is trying to wonder how to support this parent while still dealing in his own or her own family and all their responsibilities. And then the older adult children, 60 and older, yes, we have worked with even some of them, and the research has some research about them as well. Their parents are much older, of course, 80s and 90s. Some are facing health problems, and that's a big stressor. Maybe even those adult children are having health problems. So it just depends on age, you know, the age group that the adult children are in. Some of the stressors are very different from the minor children, and some are similar. And we've even talked to some 60-year-old adult children and or with their 80 or 90-year-old parents who said, we're going to go through divorce and we're worried about how it's going to affect our adult children. And we've had other divorce professionals tell us that too. So it's a mixed bag of all the different ways it can affect the adult children.
That's incredible. I mean, suffice to say, divorce always affects children. And like you said, it doesn't matter if they're 60 or 70 years old. Nobody wants to see mom and dad split up. I know you had mentioned earlier too that adult children, sometimes it can be more traumatic because they've been in the family longer. I know you had mentioned that previously, that this is the family they've known all their life. They've been in this family for 50 years, maybe they're 50 years old. And now the family that they always knew is completely changing around them, and how disorienting that could be to them, and like you mentioned, to any children of their own they may have. So this is really, really important information. And again, as we talked about before, I think we do tend to overlook adult children of divorce because we are meant to be grown-ups. And like you said, there's just that myth that, well, you're an adult, so you'll figure it out. But as parents, like we're always parents. I think you mentioned that earlier. And so we would never want to traumatize our children unnecessarily, even if they were 80.
Yes,
we wouldn't want to do that to them.
Yes.
So what can parents do? Since parents want to be there for their kids, we understand that divorce happens. It happens more frequently even now in these gray divorces. But what can parents do? What would be the most critical piece of advice you can either, and I'll let you choose, that you would give to either an adult whose parents are now going through divorce, or would you tell the parents who now need to break this news to their adult children? What would you tell them? What's the one thing you would make sure they take away from this show?
Bruce, you're muted.
You're muted, yes. I tell clients, excuse me, I tell clients that one way or another, your divorce is going to be resolved. Now, better if you do out of court process, in my opinion, but litigation or out of court, one way or the other. And at the end of the day, what's really going to matter is how much you damaged your most valuable relationships with extended family, with your own children, with your grandchildren, all those things that are going to be really important. And so how important were the air miles to be arguing over? And so I think avoiding doing everything you can to help your children avoid being put in a position where they have to choose sides, or for the extended family to choose sides for them. And because those are the things that are really hard to heal later on. Carol?
Yes, and there's research about relationships in the neuroscience, which is really amazing in that all the relationships that we're in our lives, family, work, school, all of that, can even affect the changes in our brain structure. So that's how important relationships are, as Bruce was focusing on. And we like to remind people that family is forever. for the good or the bad, and try to keep it for the good so that you can maintain these valuable relationships throughout life. Also, I would add that to learn from the adult children and the parents to learn communication skills, because communication is how we live in relationships. And most people don't know how to communicate about difficult topics. And divorce certainly is a difficult topic. So work with a counselor and therapist, take online classes, but learn how to communicate effectively. And Bruce mentioned earlier the power of listening. If you don't know anything else to do, listen deeply, don't judge, don't criticize, and remember that family is forever.
Right.
And I think that would go both ways. Parents, listen to your kids, and kids, listen to your parents.
Yes.
And if you're really desperate for somebody to talk to, then go talk to your best friend, or talk to a clergy person who's experienced with this, or with a therapist. Somebody who doesn't have any skin in the game and can just help you get through this, and it doesn't bleed into your other relationships.
And there are a lot of free divorce groups, just as Marcella is going to tell you about, that DivorceTown USA offers.
Yes.
Exactly. So there's lots of resources out there. I think my takeaway from today is no matter how old you are, you're still a family. And even a couple that gets divorced in their 70s or their 80s, they're still going to be a family. We tell this to young parents all the time. You might get divorced, but you're always going to be parents to these children. And so do whatever you can to protect and preserve the fabric of that family. Yes, it's going to transition. Yes, you guys are going to live separate lives, but you will always, always share your children, and your children will always, always share you. So thank you so much, Bruce and Carol, for this amazing episode. We appreciate so much the insights that you have brought to us, and really opened our eyes to the issue with adult children of gray divorce, so that they too can get hope and healing faster and preserve their relationships with their parents. Thank you both for being with us today. Now, before we go, we're just going to share a few resources and products that we have lined up for you, some things that are offered through DivorceTown USA. So I'm just going to bring up a couple of graphics to the screen. Here you'll see the DivorceTown roadmap. This can be downloaded at divorcetownusa.com. This is a free ebook that navigates you through the map you see here. Basically, we want to help you divorce amicably, cooperatively, collaboratively, anything but going through traditional litigation, which costs a fortune, both emotionally, financially, and sometimes even physically. So go to DivorceTown USA and download your roadmap there. DivorceTown USA also has numerous articles, events, videos, all kinds of things that are free that you can access and download to help you get through your divorce happier and healthier. Also, DivorceTown USA has a marketplace. We've developed this marketplace to bring you some of our favorite books, products, and resources that we've found through the years that can help you through the process so that you can thrive long afterwards. Included in the marketplace is the book that we've been talking about today. That is Home Will Never Be the Same Again, a guide for adult children of gray divorce. And you'll find that in the Divorce and Children section of the marketplace. Also, DivorceTown USA sponsors the Divorce Help and Hope support group. This support group is done through Meetup. It is free and available to both men and women. We meet once or twice a month. We do have our next meeting coming up on February the 9th, always virtually, and you can always get the dates and times and links at DivorceTown USA in the event section. Last but not least, Lisa has also created the free divorce financial fitness kit to help you get ready, get organized, and get answers. This is an ebook that is going to help you collect the documents that you're going to need in order to get divorced. These would be your financial documents. There is a working spreadsheet that you can use, and also a very helpful 50 must-ask questions for when you do meet with an attorney. Also free and available at divorcemoneymatters.com. So what do we have in store for next week? Next week, we're going to continue this theme of healing families, and we're going to talk about healing intergenerational trauma. Our guests next week will be Dr. Deborah Russo and Annie Gary. And they're going to talk about how trauma can affect spouses and their relationships to each other, and how we can heal from it, whether it's during a marriage or after divorce. So please be sure to join us next week for that. As always, we're sure you found this week's episode of Divorce Do's and Don't Show helpful. And we hope that you'll join us next week and every week as we continue to improve the way the world divorces, one family at a time.